screen. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so well, I have a couple of techniques here I wanted to run past you. So, um, yeah, right. A lot of writing, I think, comes from the heart. So your emotions and thoughts colour the story. There's techniques to learn too. This talk covers a couple I've come across as a learner writer. Now, these aren't formulas or guarantees. They're not going to turn a poor story into anything wonderful. They can add a little polish. They'll take you from competent to dangerous, maybe deadly. Maybe there'll be enough to get you published. So I'll take. Can you see the second screen of the introduction? Is that all right? Is that coming up?
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Okay, that's good. I'll take questions at the end of the show, and I'll hand up my email address if you've got the complex questions which won't fit into a session. So the first technique is going to be talking about editing tools. I'm blessed with a fabulous writing group. That covers fiction and non-fiction. People bring work for critique, and group members provide friendly and constructive feedback. It's all great fun. There's one member that keeps on harping on about automatic editing tools all the time, every single session. Okay, that's me. A friend of mine, actually, it was Alan, a few Lavecons ago, recommended tools. I tried them. I found them absolutely wonderful. It took me some time to work out how to use them, but I got there in the end. And I've set down my thinking here. Now, I use something called Pro Writing Aid. There are other tools out there like Grammarly, AutoCrit, Hemingway. Google has some reviews for you. I won't run that past you. The best software is one you know, so I'll avoid recommendations. Most offer a free tester version or a trial period, so try them out. Tools are easy to use. You write your piece, click a button to analyze words. I have I think there's a Google Docs add-in and a Word add-in as well. The application will analyze your words, you correct the red ink, you revise. So Pro Writing Aid offers a range of reports from grammar checkers to readability scores. It'll check if you've repeated any phrases, which is handy because your eye will often skip over words you've repeated. So each tool spews out enough numbers to fill a telephone directory, but those numbers only suggest you might have a problem. This blog post covers the thinking needed to see what you can do about it. So the pandemic has shunted our feedback sessions online, and links to Google Docs have replaced photocopied sheets. Now I've sneakily run my editing tool on people's work, and one issue keeps coming up. The contributors write well, but their compositions are often stuffed with what the editing tools call glue words. They're filler words, scaffolding words like and, or, was, that. They're essential, but they can be overused. So have a Google search for glue words, you'll find references. I've got a short list for you there. There's too many glue words will dilute your meaning. I'm as guilty as anyone of overusing these. First draft, I wrote my first novel, Lightmaker. First draft, I actually kept hold of the first draft, looked at that, and the glue word percentage was 52%. Over half the words were glue words. You recommended not let the glue word percentage get over 40. So I had a diagnosis for the problem, but what was the treatment? I could go through highlighting all the glue words, but just cutting them out left the sentence meaningless. So I scrawled the most common glue words on a card and searched for all the the's and ands in my work. You cut them out, you just leave nonsense behind, but I could make progress. So there we go. Bear with me. Right. So I had a phrase like the leaves that were falling. A bit of work on this. I got the falling leaves. Going forward, I had another phrase. There was something dripping onto her face. I changed that to something dripped onto her face. I think we can agree the second version's just snappier and clearer. Has the same meaning, but less glue words. Each of these experiences became for each experience. So plurals can also cause trouble. Okay, bear with me. So it took some time before cutting glue came naturally, and I still needed to edit my work, but I think I'm improving. My writing now starts around 40. My first draft, it starts around 44% glue. Still need some polish, but not too much. So weeding out glue words helped, but too many remains. So I stepped back. Some of my sentences did 3 or 4 jobs, and the joins between jobs needed scaffolding, which meant glue words. So rewriting gave I rewrote it so each sentence had just one job, and I ditched even more glue. So here's another example for you. As Paul was running to try to catch the train that would take him to his new home in Bristol, he remembered that he had forgotten to say goodbye to Jenny, and he knew that her feelings would be very hurt. That's a little pudgy there. Bear with me. Hang on. I'm not skilled at this. Bear with me. Okay, so I'm just going to move forward to the next slide. Paul sprinted for the Bristol train to start his new life. Jenny flashed into his mind. He'd forgotten to say goodbye, and she would never forgive him. So I personally think that's quite a bit stronger there. Do excuse me, there we go. So let's go. Let me click back. Let me go through what I've done here. I've taken out he remembered that and he knew that. And to be honest, I've lost nothing. It's clear Paul is doing the remembering and the knowing. I think my other cuts help too. I had the phrase, her feelings would be very hurt. So I've changed that to, she would never forgive him. The second phrase is a word shorter. It also replaces, I have a vague hurt in the first series, first line, and talk of forgiving in the next one, which does a bit more work. So the 2 lines have identical meanings, but the second has fewer words. So those words, I would argue, work harder. There's this guideline about having a sentence having just one job is just a guideline. Below, I'll explain when to swerve around that idea. Let's click on. So avoiding the passive voice also helped. There are exceptions, but the active voice usually means fewer sticky words. The boy should pick the lock. Don't have the lock picked by the boy. I think we mentioned this in the game writing workshop, but you want to avoid pestering readers with trivia. So a character's opinion might be crucial, but try and avoid giving details of shopping trips unless your character needs to spout trivialities. There's phrases like, I picked up this book in the Oxford branch of Waterstones and read it while on a review site. We don't really need to know where you bought the book. The review's going to be the same even if you bought the book from Oxfam in Weston-super-Mare. The use of thesauruses. Some people frown on thesauri, but my thesaurus would be dog-eared if it wasn't virtual. I'm always hunting for strong verb. They bring extra meaning. For instance, looking over something is a bit vague, but I could say stare, which suggests hostility. Gaze suggests calm. Scan suggests analysis. I'd always argue you should go for simple words. I mentioned the Pro Writing Aid reports. There's one that covers readability. I think Emily mentioned this in the talk on copy. Most readers have an average age of 9, and when you're writing copy, that's important to keep that in mind. I worked hard to make my novel easy to read. I don't quite get down to the 9-year-old status, but the editing tool has said a 10-year-old should be able to follow the text, which I don't think is too bad. Do try to replace adverbs. They can work in dialogue and they can't always be avoided. I can't think of a replacement that whispered seductively, but most automatic editing tools flag adverbs as errors. Don't slavishly follow the tool's recommendations. I tend to use the phrase, treat these editing tools like a wonky sat nav, but do search for a stronger verb. There's no silver bullet, but these techniques can give you some lead bullets, and together they can see you winning. So I stepped back a bit. That can take these tricks can take you so far in improving your text, but there's more to do. So I got some professional feedback on LightMaker from a book editor. He said, well, your writing's competent, but maybe lacking the strength to grab an agent's attention. So I struggled for some time to understand what he meant by strength, but reading lots of published novels, reading books on creative writing, uncovered a few techniques. The heart of it is that good writing never wastes a word, even the spaces between words go to work. So be clear on what you say. Make each point once and be brief. Know your characters. I wrote these two sentences. I grew up in rural Somerset, but had the peculiar goal of wanting to be an astronaut. I personally think that's better as I dreamt of being an astronaut, strange for a Somerset boy. So how did I make this journey? What was the travel that I went through, my voyage? So I listed the essential points my sentence should make. A, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a boy. B, I grew up in Somerset. And C, astronaut's an unusual career choice for someone growing up in Somerset. So it's best to start with the key point, and that's my distinctive ambition, point A. And I use the phrase dreamt of becoming. It's shorter than I wanted to be an astronaut. It suggests an emotional goal, and I've also shed some glue words. So my new sentence starts, I dreamt of becoming an astronaut. I still need to say I had this dream when I was a boy, but I'll do that in a bit. So I've started the sentence at the main point. I've reduced the glue word scaffolding, but it's also important to make sure there's variety in your sentence types. It avoids things being monotonous. The point B deals with origins. I can replace the original I grew up in rural Somerset with Somerset boy, and this handles the point I made earlier for point A. Readers are bright. Give them 2 plus 2 and they'll make 4, and they'll even enjoy the task. They know that boys grow up. The word rural was vanished. I think you could add that without harm, but the key point is the ambition's strangeness. Point C talks about the unusual career goal with the phrase peculiar goal. Peculiar goal isn't bad, but I needed glue words to gum the phrase onto the sentence's start. The second version starts with the boy's goal. He's making a choice, so I don't need the word choice again. Strange is a simpler word than peculiar, so it might be more vivid. Some glue can't be avoided. I needed a 4A to link the strangeness of the boy's situation. The second sentence's glue ratio is, let's call up the figures here. First sentence was 52.9 glue words. Second was 36.4. Someone told me once that most published writing has a glue word percentage of under 40. It's difficult to get there, but you can do it. So just keep rewriting, keep trying stuff out. I'm going to argue there's another reason to prefer that second sentence. And there's a narrator that was describing the dreaming youth as a Somerset boy. He describes his thoughts as strange. And there's a little hint of opinion here, which suggests a bit of personality in the narrator. I think the third sentence doesn't quite show that hint of character. It's a bit more neutral. I would argue that there's voice in the second sentence. There's that combination of personality and distinctiveness that agents are always looking for. These techniques help me reach that voice, but I also needed to understand my narrator's personality to make everything tie together. I drew a basic sketch of my narrating character. Their glass is their glass half full or half empty? How do they view people that are trying to improve themselves? I let this personality colour their words. So the first sentence has 17 words, the second version has 11. I think there's the same amount of what I might call drama there. I'd also argue that so there's fewer words, so maybe it's a bit more concentrated. I'd argue the second version is more vivid because of that. So try these techniques and hopefully the improvements will roll in. Don't be ruled by the glue word percentage. Great writing is often stuffed with glue. As I say, treat the writing tools as a wonky sat nav, but do scrutinise each word, especially when the tools suggest there's an issue. So I want to tie this session together by mentioning my favourite author of all time, George Orwell. Says 6 guidelines for writers there. I have these printed out on the wall. We didn't sort of cover points 1 and 4, which is about freshness and avoiding cliches and jargon words. But I think I've mentioned 2 in being writing simply. I've mentioned 3 that quite a few of my better versions cut words out. I mentioned using the active voice wherever you can. And I think the last point just stands by itself. I think it's quite wonderful. Writing's a really open-ended thing. If you think a phrase works, keep it in, even if all the editing tools are screaming at you. You're in charge, not the editing tool. It's just a guide. So that's how I treat the automatic editors. Keep yourself in charge. Treat the automatic editing tools like a wonky sat nav. Scrutinise anything that flags up. Keep reading other novels, not just in those in your genre. Write every day. Join your writing group and have fun. Okay, that's halfway through my presentation. Is anyone still with me? Are you enjoying yourselves? So to move on to the second technique now. Okay. So this technique is called narrative distance, also called psychic distance. But what actually is it? It's a way of dealing with. I want to take an example from film. Filmmakers often want to establish where a story is happening. They'll start with a long shot and move to a medium shot to show who's involved, and they'll use a close-up. Later on, move into a close-up shot to show some emotions. So we've got a long shot here. It sort of gives us a fairly gritty, urban, isolated feel. We see a person, but not many details. Maybe it's not something you'd want to spend too long. Second shot, medium shot. Now that's giving us a little more information about the woman, the young female, decently dressed, city grassland. She's looking around her. Maybe she's unfamiliar with the area. We're not quite sure. Third shot zooms in on the person. I think she's wearing a bit of makeup, not much. She's young. Maybe we sense she's looking or waiting for something. So these shots set the scene. Someone's gone to somewhere fairly she's not familiar with. She's fairly well dressed. So maybe she's going to meet someone we don't know. But it puts a hook in for us to want to find out. So there's other techniques that filmmakers can use, but this one is a useful start. And there's a useful technique in creative writing. You could vary the distance between your story and your character's mind. You could think of this as having 5 levels, but it's more of a spectrum. The technique is called narrative distance, sometimes psychic distance. You might be writing from inside the character's mind or monitoring it from afar. So I'm going to use the phrase ND, which means narrative distance, and they come in various levels. ND1 is a long shot, like a long shot in film. As a matter of fact, bare bones, gives us the details, little or no personality, all tell, no show. An example might be a country lane snaked between 2 15-foot-high hedges. Everything is remote and objective and passive. It's a once upon a time way to narrate a story. Let's have a look at ND2. This is mostly tell with a little show. You're sprinkling in personality. We're edging towards the character's mind and opinions. Here's an example. He wasn't a fan of these winding Somerset lanes. Let's move to MD3. This is sort of the medium shot. It's a mixture of show and tell, halfway house. The personalities are beginning to come to the surface. For example, he hated being snared between these hedges and their scratching branches. He hated crawling along. Personalities coming to the fore now. With ND4, like a close-up, they're much closer to the character. Opinions take the lead. There's more show, less tell. Example, he cursed and slammed on the brake. Precious seconds lost. ND5, this is where the film metaphor breaks down a bit. You can't do this in film. You cannot put a camera inside someone's head. You could, but it wouldn't be dramatic. Imagine it like an X-ray of thinking. All show, very little tell. A deep close-up on the personality, uncensored thoughts, all passion and guts. What's it like to be in their head? Here's an example. Oh, sorry, that's in the wrong slide there. Damn country roads. Why don't they grub up these filthy hedges? Let me drive like I want. The writer and the character can show how the character experiences the world. We're staying inside the character's mind all the time. You probably won't want to go from ND1 to ND5 in just 5 chained together sentences, but this is an example, so I'm allowed to do that. See these levels as a spectrum. Increase the number and you dial up the showing and get closer to your character's thoughts and emotions. Low numbers mean more telling, higher ones mean more showing. So, slide 35. So using these levels, which is the right one? The answer is all of them, as long as they're used in the right place, the right order, and the right way. So when do you use? When would you use these levels? One example is if you're starting a new scene, a new location. You're often you can often help yourself and your reader by using ND1 or 2 for these few sentences to tell us what's happening. This will help your readers orient themselves in the new space and let them concoct an image. You can do this early in the scene. Tell us where we are. But don't stay there forever. You'll bore the reader. There was this thing, and there was this other thing, and there's this third thing over there, and well, you need more than that. Your enthralling characters deserve airtime, and we should care what happens to them. Show us their personalities. So is ND4 and 5 better? We're in this character's head. His perceptions come ours, and his character is revealed. We're being shown. But the ND5 sentence above says nothing about where we are. This guy driving on those country roads might be having that thought while walking his dog. We don't know. If you stay at the highest levels, you'll just confuse your reader. So use all 5 levels, but start low to let your readers know where they are and what's happening. Climb higher as your story requires characterization, and lower when you need to tell readers. Explore your characters. That's where much of your conflict will appear. Move around the ND levels to let your story breathe. You'll often find your writing nestling around levels 2, 3, or 4, and that's fine, but don't forget the possibilities of intense telling or intense showing. Telling at ND1 is an efficient way of giving the reader information. You can show us character A having lots of exciting adventures, ND4 and 5, whatever. But if she later meets character B, you might just want to say, Jenny told Angus what had happened. So a character wrestling with a moral dilemma or undergoing extreme physical distress or similar might benefit from dipping their toe into a pool of ND5. Show us what it's like in their head. Bring their fears and imagination to life. So avoid jumping from ND1 to ND5 or vice versa. Imagine you're changing gears while driving. Sneaking a shift from 4 to 2 might work, but going from 5 to 1 could give everyone a jolt. Bending the rules is fun, but make sure you know what you're doing. Try something out and see. There's also value in flitting back to a low ND level to refresh your scenes. Reminders help a passage location stay in the reader's mind and let you add local flavour. You can introduce a greasy spoon cafe with 4 mica tables in your first sentence. Let your characters chat inside the cafe. Let's hear their personalities, but don't stay in the higher ND levels forever. Special information can remind the readers where they are without repeating the setting. Did someone scratch Bristol Rovers forever on a table? Did some joker fill the sugar bowl with salt? Even the cafe setting benefits from personality. So about changing points of view with narrative distance in mind. How does that work? People say you should never swap points of view in a scene. That's not an absolute rule. Sometimes it's the right thing to do. Narrative distance can help orient your readers if the narrator changes in the middle of a chapter. Check your narrative distance just before the point of view changes. If it's high, get it down. Go from the thoughts to the physical, from high ND to low ND. Make your swap when you're at ND1 or 2. Keep it there for a few seconds after the swap before climbing back to higher ND levels. Your readers will follow what's happening. A section break, like a string of asterisks, may help clarify matters. It's often worth ending a chapter on a cliffhanger. Now, this works well for TV shows where people can tune in, might have to wait to tune into next week, but less so for books. People can just turn the page. However, you can give the break more substance by beginning the next chapter in ND1, giving readers a distant overview and a sense of change before drifting into the action to pick up the thread from the last chapter. World building, backstory can also benefit from ND1. This level tells most efficiently and allows you to snap back into the drama. Just be careful of dumping a world building scene mid-scene. This might slow you down. So, narrative distance works well for first person as well. You can move from telling the facts to showing the moods. So here's an adult giving a dry but efficient telling of the setting at ND2. You shouldn't spend ages at this sort of level, but because you'll bore your readers. At 3, my father moved into London and bundled me with him. The city confused me, but my curiosity kept me happy. So let's move into ND4 or 5 now. This should show some personality, but you'll confuse readers if you'll stay here for too long. The buses are red and the taxi's black and they have a huge clock in a tower so high you can hardly see it. I didn't need to hold Daddy's hand because I wanted to see all the rushing. So this is ND4-ish. Lots of showing. Great for showing the child's personality, but you'll confuse people if you stay there too long. So I'm coming to the end now. So a few takeaways for you. Have a look at a piece you've written where the character's thoughts are critical. Are their emotions strong? Do they face hard choices? Do they face extreme danger? Rewrite this in ND5 style. See how the super close narrative affects your story's flow. This can breathe life into your characters, though it can take time to master ND5. Common traits of ND5 writing, what do they look like? Sentence fragments, chains of association, repetition, characters interrogating themselves, heightened use of senses, flavoured opinions. Keep those verbs vivid. So rewrite scenes of there's some tasks you might want to take on, see how you get on. Try rewriting a scene with a particular ND level in mind, see which works best. See how published authors use those levels. I've got to say that most authors won't be familiar with these terms, but they'll probably understand the concept and just instinctively know how to use each level. You might not want to write with narrative distance in your first draft, but rewrites can get it in there. Stretch yourself later on. Add some 4 or 5 now and again to show personality. So I think this can elevate a novel from competent to excellent. This can add voice to your character, something that agents are always after. Just a final conclusion. I'm still learning the trade, but if you want to chat to me about these techniques, that's fine. If you want to email me, treaclecustard@gmail.com, or my webpage, kevinelliott.space, my blog called Where's My Flipping Tea. If you email me at that address, I'll send you this presentation, the talk and slides, and a list of references, reading materials. If you go to my blog, click on the young girl there, you'll work through a process, which I'll cover tomorrow, where you can get some short stories that I've written. That's free. It's a gift to you. If you'd be really hardcore, you could download my novel, Light Maker, and reviews would be wonderful. There's a web address for you there. So that's me. I shall stop sharing. I hope that was straightforward, but useful to you. Okay. Everyone shocked and horrified.
Thank you very. Oh dear! I just realised I've made a little faux pas there by jumping to me when I've got the wrong camera on. Give me a second while I flip it. There we go. We'll get it back to normal. Thank you, Kevin. That was great, and I'm sure it was very interesting. I'm not sure. Do you want an opportunity for some questions? If there's any questions?
I'm happy to answer questions now if people have time.
No problem. So if you have any questions, then do by all means chuck them into chat, and we will put them to Kevin.
I was thinking the short questions in chat, longer questions you can email me, and
yeah, absolutely.
If you want a copy of that presentation, slides and text, email me.
There we go. There was certainly a few people that were acknowledging the advice suddenly made sense to them, and like, oh, I keep doing that wrong all the time. So I think you hopefully have helped an awful lot of people with little tips, and certainly the ND factors. That was really quite fascinating. Really quite interesting in the concept of that. The utilising of it. So fantastic. Thank you very much. I think everyone is kind of just absorbing that and. Get in touch. We'll make sure that the details are, I think they're on the programme anyway, and make sure people can get in touch with you, Kevin. Thank you once again. That was
Cheers, guys.
Really, really good. Okay, so let's see, what have we got coming up next? We've got great games of the past at 5:30, so you've got about 25 minutes to go and refresh your glasses, take a wee walk, grab something to eat, and then join us back for a look at some of those great games.